For the past 18 months, the US and China have been slapping higher tariffs on each other's products and introducing punitive trade measures. On Wednesday, they finally signed off on a truce.
Today we take a momentous step, one that has never been taken before with China, toward a future of fair and reciprocal trade as we sign phase one of the historic trade deal between the United States and China. Together we are righting the wrongs of the past and delivering a future of economic justice and security for American workers, farmers, and families.
As part of the deal, Washington will suspend higher tariffs on Beijing exports worth $160 billion, halve tariffs on Chinese goods worth $120 billion, and maintain tariffs of 25% on Chinese products worth $250 billion. US officials say these duties may be raised or lowered depending on the speed and transparency with which Beijing delivers on its promises. Beijing has reportedly agreed to stop manipulating the value of the yuan to make its goods cheaper. It will retract laws that force foreign firms operating in the country to hand over technology to their Chinese partners, and it will increase purchases of US agricultural products by $40 billion a year. That could boost demand for American soybeans and other crops hard hit by the trade war.
I think it's very positive, and the longer a trade war drags on, the more volatility you see in the end markets and the more uncertainty you see. And again, it will allow us also to make investments into the respective regions now based on a clearer set of rules.
But critics say the deal doesn't address US concerns over the protection of intellectual property rights and state subsidies for Chinese firms.
After 18 months of negotiations, the Phase 1 deal is remarkable for how little it achieves at an enormous price.
Negotiations for a Phase 2 deal have already begun, but US officials say the terms won't be finalized until after the presidential elections scheduled for November. That could offer months of relative calm to markets that have been rattled by tit-for-tat tariff hikes between the world's largest economies, but only if the deal holds. Mobin Nasir, TRT World.
Well, for more, let's go to Laurence Kotlikoff in Moscow. He's a professor of economics at Boston University and an associate at the National Bureau of Economic Research. Welcome back to Money Talks, Laurence. Now, the two leaders in Washington are signing the agreement as we speak. The details of the deal are trickling out. We know that China has committed to purchasing an additional $200 billion worth of US goods. What do you make of what we know about the deal? Is it substantial? Is it a reason to celebrate, as Donald Trump has said?
Yeah, I think it's probably just window dressing. Everything that Donald Trump does is about Donald Trump, and I don't think we should trust a word he says because he's a congenital liar. And the people that have looked at the actual details of the agreement think they're having, at least it says in the press that I haven't been able to read it, but it says that this is basically just window dressing and there's nothing fundamentally different from before he took office. And that's what I would expect. The timing of when he announced this partial deal, that he's keeping tariffs on, it's all about the election because he's going to be able to say, I negotiated a great deal for us and I'm still being tough. Everything is being done here to improve his image. But fundamentally, it sounds like China hasn't changed its position on subsidizing its industry and also intellectual property. And I think the only way we're going to get that to happen is joint forces with other trading partners like Canada and Europe that are interacting with China and collectively negotiating with China.
Okay, now you mentioned the presidential election, which will be happening in November this year. How does this help the president's chances of re-election?
Well, he gets to say that he cut a great deal, and he can, say whatever he wants because he does say whatever he wants. He can say it's the best deal that any ever negotiated in the history of the entire country. I'm sure he'll claim something like that. And then he can also say he's remaining tough with China because he's left significant tariffs in place. So it's exactly what I expect him to do, which is basically not achieve anything real, but be able to say that he did achieve something, and he got the the Chinese to play along. So everything's about policy for this thing. You can't trust a word he says, and nobody in the administration is telling the truth, as far as I can tell. So I think this is just more of the same.
We're looking at live pictures of Donald Trump addressing the media right now ahead of the signing of the deal with China. But you mentioned the thornier issues of intellectual property rights and forced technology transfers. The administration admits that those issues aren't being tackled in this phase of the agreement, but we might see it in the second phase. Are you hopeful of that? Do you think we might see a resolution to those issues in the next stage of this trade deal?
Well, I think if it was easy to negotiate, to get them to change their behavior, it would have been done. But I think the reality is that this is really hurting China more than the U.S. because U.S. companies are not handing over their code to the Chinese for them to replicate in a new company that competes with them. No U.S. company would do that. So what they do is they have the Chinese do menial tasks like assemble products, but they're not sharing their intellectual property to begin with. They're not stupid. So major U.S. companies are not getting swindled by this Chinese provision. And I think it's just hurting China. And what we should be doing is telling the Chinese, and we get European, Canadian people in countries in South America, we should all be saying to China, look, if you have these rules, we're going to have exactly the same rules on any investment that you do in the U.S. or anywhere else in the developed world. That might change their behavior, but I think we have to think through would a U.S. company really just hand over its technology just to do business in China and then have somebody compete against it the next day? No.
No. Okay, Laurence Kotlikoff, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you for sharing your analysis with us on the program.